And what we know now is that the 2-week hearing for Manchester City's legal action against the Premier League around associated party transactions is underway, having got underway yesterday. So what's involved with it? City have launched legal action against the Premier League. Their claim argues that rules around associated party transactions are unlawful. Delighted to say, joining Simon and myself, not for the first time, FFP expert and ex-financial advisor to Manchester City, Stefan Borson, joins us live in studio. This is becoming a regular occurrence, isn't it, Stefan? And this is because of ongoing events such as this, right?
Yeah, there's quite a lot going on. I mean, I did have a conversation with you guys, and we thought that it may go quiet until after the Euros.
Yeah.
And then immediately
Yeah.
we have quite a serious challenge from City. So
tell us this. Be honest with me, what was your initial reaction when news was leaked that City were taking legal action against the Premier League?
Well, I was surprised, largely because I didn't think they'd want to be distracted in the run-up to the big event, the hearing that's coming at the end of the year, which clearly is of significantly more importance and relates to very serious matters. That said, the warning signs have been here in respect of associated party transactions now, really since they were originally brought in, and nobody can be surprised, really, that there has been a challenge from City and or other clubs, because they've been quite open about their position in respect of the expansion of the rules. They clearly told the league when the vote went through that they didn't support it. They threatened in February that if the rules were expanded in the way that they ultimately were, that they may take legal action. And they launched the legal action within days of those changes coming through, which tells you that they obviously had done quite a lot of preparation. And I assume also had been quite open with the Premier League and the rest of the clubs around the table that if the rules were expanded in the way that they were in February, that would be the straw that broke the camel's back. So overall, I think surprised that they've done it now just because City have got other things on their plate.
Yeah, sure.
But not surprised that they want to challenge these rules.
I mean, Simon, yesterday, you said, amongst other things, the behaviour from Manchester City was abhorrent. It was bullying. If it was up to Simon, he'd chuck them out of the league. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's what I said. I think it's a visceral reaction, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it brings out a visceral reaction in people. Now, of course, that then moves you into their territory. Because if I'm suggesting they should be expelled, then I'm moving into the territory of the tyranny of the majority, aren't I? Which is the allegations that they make in the first place. Right. When I look at Man City's behaviour, I look at it, it's like living in a co-opted apartment building and playing your music too loud and your neighbour knocking on your door and punching you in the face. He might have a valid point, but his method of execution is a bit extreme. And that's what I view Manchester City's behaviour as in this set of circumstances. They're not the pantomime villains that maybe some of the language that people like me have used, and they have a right to question things. But this is about building supremacy on top of supremacy. If they've been discriminated against and they're being prejudiced, then Christ on a bike, what are we going to do when they're not then?
Right.
Under their logic, because they've already got the domination. This is about sporting excellence, not financial excellence. And Manchester City, in my view, are, like most people do trying to game the system.
Sure. I mean, has Simon not got a point there, amongst various things that he's just said? Is this not unbecoming of a Premier League club to sue the Premier League?
Well, look, let's take a step back and actually look at what has happened. And the outline. So you have a situation where the club's been taken over, let's say 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Everybody around the table takes the money in terms of transfers and in terms of the investment being made from Abu Dhabi. Then from about 2013, things start to happen on the pitch. And at that point, it seems that people have a little bit more of an issue with it, and we get some rules. Nobody's challenged any of those rules all the way through. But it gets to a point in 2021 where the club tells the Premier League, in private, by the way, which is then immediately leaked out to the press, that it objects to the expansion of the rules. It also has certain votes that occur in relation to the new rules, and then again in February of 2024. Again, the club in private tells the rest of the table that they do not agree with those rules, that they think they may be unlawful, and that they may seek a case to consider the lawfulness of those rules. All of that from City's side is done privately. They then, under the Premier League rules...
But information gets out, doesn't it, Stefan? It gets out.
Well, it does, but it doesn't... I mean, that's... If one of the other clubs decides to leak the whole situation, including in this scenario, the entire document to one
national newspaper
journalist, then there's very little City can do about that in terms of keeping the whole matter private. City, as far as we can tell, City have not been the party who has leaked their position out there. And so from a perspective, and I'm not here to apologise to City, I don't think they'll win the hearing, by the way, but what I would say is that they are entitled to challenge rules that they believe are unlawful. And the hearing is 2 weeks long. It tells you that there's clearly a case to answer in terms of the lawfulness of those rules. And it should be uncontroversial within the game that if the rules are unlawful, they should be removed and replaced by something that is lawful. That should not be a controversial point. We cannot operate.
And we can probably drive a bus through this industry with unlawful rules if we wanted to take them through the legal system and look at the manner in which transfers are conducted, windows of time when transfers can be sold, the manner in which players are dealt with. But it's an interesting categorisation because what you're building is a backstory to the reasons why rules were introduced, rather than an adaptation to the change of the game and the evolution of ownership models and the evolving sport as we see it, and also the fact that UEFA were the architects of some of that. So when you position a picture of Premier League club owners sitting around the table not liking the idea that Man City are becoming a force, but quite prepared to take their money in the meantime, it actually takes away the argument that UEFA were the intellectual capital behind financial governance, and the Premier League were slower than most to adapt to UEFA's position. So it's not this situation where you've got 19 avaricious Premier League chairmen that want to take City's money when it suits them, and not have the consequences of it.
If you don't think Stefan City are going to be successful here in this hearing against the Premier League, why are they doing it? They might be successful. Do you think they think they're going to be successful?
I'm sure they've had strong advice that there's an arguable case. I've explained here before that these cases are very rarely crystal clear. I mean, these cases turn on very minor, what we would consider minor details of law and evidence. And we can't sit here, having read simply one article in the Times, which is a very partial piece, clearly written with the assistance, in my view, of one of the clubs that leaked the document to them. We can't sit here and judge the quality or not of their case, and we can't, in fairness, look at the detail about certain phrases that are being used in 165 pages and focus on that and suggest that therefore the case will go a certain way. We don't know. The case will be 2 weeks of the top cases in this country arguing about competition law, and not discrimination as in racial discrimination, discrimination as in trading discrimination and fair market competition as they see it within competition law. It is a hugely dry and esoteric subject. And there's no possible way that we from the outside can judge how that's going to go. I say it's unlikely City will prevail just because these sorts of challenges are typically very difficult to win, and therefore they're likely not to succeed. But a lot of the other noise that's around it, in terms of it being the end of the game or the end of regulation, City are not seeking to destroy the entire set of Premier League rules. This is about a set of rules brought in 2021 directly on the back of the takeover of Newcastle United by the Saudis. That is not in dispute. And then expanded in February of 2024, relating to 3 clubs. One of them is Chelsea, one of them is City, and one of them is Newcastle. And it's also a warning sign for any other clubs that are up for sale not to sell to certain types of owners.
This is also the underlying objective. And all of this that Stefan says is correct. And there is a part of me that, in part, looks at Manchester City and says, well, everyone's benefited, like he says, about transfers. The Exchequer's received a lot of money as a result of Man City's investment. But Man City signed up to a football construct that had certain rules. And rules evolve because circumstances change. Manchester City's overarching objective is really to try and do what they want when they want, or Man City's ownership, shall I say. And they don't like associated party transaction rules because it prohibits their opportunity to do that, because ultimately they have an infinite amount of money and they can do precisely what they want. And if they want to construct, as is the allegation, and yet to be proven allegation, transactions that underpin the commercial viability and success of their football club by inflated sponsorship deals, which have yet to be proven, they would quite like not to have an associated party transaction. No other industry would be bothered by this, but football is. And then you move into the next part of it, which is the club relationship and the amount of clubs that one ownership model can have, and how that you can be utilised to game the system, to find a way round the financial barriers that governance is supposedly to put in place. So I have a mixed view to it. I think we've got the most investable league in the world, and I don't like the economic asphyxiation that's going on. But I also believe that there does need to be some balance and some governance. And this is not about financial excellence. This is about sporting excellence. And what Manchester City are doing, or Manchester City's ownership, let's separate the club from the ownership, is they want to have complete and utter supremacy built on top of supremacy. And so there has to be some balance.
Okay.
And there has to be some caveat.
A lot of people getting in touch this morning asking me to ask you how interlinked this current case is at the moment. This current case, a 2-week hearing regarding City and the Premier League, to the big one in November, the 115 charges against the football club.
Well, first of all, we just need to take a step back and caution against drawing too many conclusions, because what I said before, we're basing all of our analysis in respect of the latest case, the one that's running at the moment, on one article in the Times, and therefore reading into that what this case is about. But let's say, take that on face value. The case that's running at the moment is specifically related to the rules that came in post-December 2021, associated party rules. None of those rules existed in the time period in which City are charged with 115 charges. It's actually 130, but 115. The vast majority of the charges that are laid in respect of the 115 relate to something far more fundamental than associated party transactions. They relate to the veracity of the accounts that City put to the Premier League and filed with Companies House and were audited for the period, a 10-year period from 2009 up to 2018. It's just far more fundamental than whether the rules around associated party transactions are lawful or unlawful. Therefore, I say it will have next to no impact at all on the main event, because either City are right and the rules that were put in place following the Newcastle takeover are unlawful, should be deleted and replaced with something that some rules that are lawful. So if City are right, that's what will happen. Or City will just lose. And if City lose, well, it certainly can't have a positive impact on the 115 case. It could have, optically, a negative impact, but it probably has no impact whatsoever, because all that will have happened is they will have gone to a private arbitration. Lawyers on both sides, very, very high-quality lawyers on both sides, will have had a 2-week argument, and that panel will have made a decision based upon what they heard. And it will be interesting from a competition law perspective, and not interesting in respect of the 115 charges. So I say it has next to no impact whatsoever.
I mean, there's Duncan, who's got in touch. Morning to you, Duncan. I'm a solicitor, and I have no doubt that Manchester City do not think they'll win this case, and that they're very concerned about the wider case to be heard in November. They have to bring this current case as Hail Mary, because if they are successful, it effectively kills the case to be heard in November. Also, if it comes to November and they are found guilty, making allegations of unfairness subsequent to this would make them look desperate and reactionary. And Duncan's a solicitor. Is he spot on with that?
No. I mean, I just totally disagree. I mean, you know, if you want to get him on, then we can have a discussion about why he believes that. But I don't agree with that for the reasons that I've said. The cases are just not alike. The City case, you know, we've talked about it many times. The 115 case is an allegation of the most serious nature.
You are confused or not clear as to, and I think it was originally what you said was because you think they'll be distracted with 150. Now, of course, they've got the amount of resource they've got. I don't think that will cause them a distraction. They've got huge resources to be able to bring whichever lawyers they want to be able to deal with the charges in front of them. but we are confused or not entirely clear why Man City would decide to pick up this cudgel at this moment in time. And I do think there is some relationship between having a successful outcome in this as building a tenant for an argument in another conversation. It might be not as prevalent as a determining silver bullet, but I do think it would be useful for Man City. If Man City, and I do think this is a 50-50, I think this is a pick 'em case. I don't think if I was...
this one?
Yeah. I think if I was going to council and asking council, what do you think? I think I'd probably get 50-50 and you take a view. If you've got the kind of money that you've got with Man City, you take a view on 50-50. If I was me, I wouldn't take a view on 50-50. I'd say, unless I've got a good case, I'm not running it.
Yeah.
City don't have that problem. But if they do land a point about associated party transactions, and they do question the validity of the Premier League's thinking. Now, of course, you're sort of having your cake and eating it. You're saying, well, actually, I might have breached the rules, but the rules themselves don't actually stand up to the test of time.
So that's a fair point, isn't it?
This is what I keep coming back to. Even if you go back to what the rule book looked like at the time in which City are accused of these breaches, there were no rules about related party transactions or associated party transactions. But there's always going to be rules about filing true and fair accounts. It's an absolutely fundamental,
they've just sophisticated the terminology, haven't they? Because ultimately,
well,
they have to some extent, haven't they? Just correct me if you think my think is wrong. Yeah. Ultimately, what they're being the allegations is that they are disguising equity as commercial revenue, or the other way around. Sorry. And associated party transactions is at the centre of that, because the allegation is that businesses that they have a vested interest are inflating sponsorships to be able to give Man City the opportunity to overcome their challenges. So it is a cousin of a particular tree.
Yeah. I agree, it's a cousin. Yeah.
So if it's a cousin, it's related, then it can become relatable. And if you've got very skilled advocates that can wheedle it into a conversation and start to build tenets and planks of various arguments, I don't think it's a disadvantage for Man City. It's a no-lose situation. If they win this case, they advantage themselves as a result of it. If they lose it, then what have they lost?
We just go back to the basic point. There's no set of rules that would permit what City are accused of doing between 2009 and 2018. They're accused of making up their accounts. And if that is proven, then they will suffer very severe sanctions.
We're heading towards...
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.